let us start from what is now. How could we describe what is now? One way of describing it is that there are shapes, colors, sounds, bodily sensations, thoughts, memories, and so on. So we could describe what is now in terms of objects appearing. Of course, a sound needs, but must be heard. A shape or a color has to be seen. A bodily sensation has to be felt. And so another way of describing what is now is to say that there is hearing, seeing, feeling bodily sensations, thinking. That is, we can describe what is in terms of perceiving activities. When we describe what is in terms of objects, sounds, colors, bodily sensations, all of them, the totality of them is what we call reality. When we describe what is in terms of the perceiving activities, hearing, seeing, and so on, the totality of them is what we call experience. Now, is there any aspect of what we call reality that can appear apart from experience? Is there one single sound that can appear without hearing? One single color without the activity of seeing? Of course, no. And so, no aspect whatsoever of what we call reality can appear apart from experience. And so, as far as it concerns us, reality is not separate from experience. Reality and experience are two different ways to name whatever it is. Now, experience, our experiences, seeing, hearing, happen in a perspective that we can describe as first person. I see, I hear. There is an alive first person perception of things. And that is what usually we call consciousness or awareness. And also what we call awareness is the sensitive space where every experience appears and disappears. Because every experience arises and passes away. There is no experience that lasts forever. And this appearing and disappearing, this arising and passing away of experiences is what we call change. And the way our thought measures change is what we call time, because our thought segmentates change in many bits that we call seconds, minutes, hours, days, and so on. So time is the measure of change. But in order to be perceived, change needs a changeless background. And that is also what we call consciousness or awareness. Change is made of experiences that arise and pass away. Now, for example, in order to perceive the beginning of a sound, consciousness must be there before the beginning and after. And in order to perceive the ending of a sound, our consciousness must be there during the sound and after the sound has stopped. And so, consciousness is always here, is constant, while experiences arise and pass away in this space. Now, is there any experience, perceiving experience, any seeing, any hearing, any feeling that can appear apart from consciousness? Of course, no. No aspect whatsoever of experience can appear without consciousness. And so, experience is not apart from consciousness. Experience and consciousness are not separate. And so we can say that, therefore, if reality is not separate from experience, and if experience is not separate from what we call consciousness, reality is not separate from consciousness. Reality and consciousness, as far as it concerns us, are two ways to point to the same whatever it is. And since the name that the mind gives to consciousness usually is I, we can say with Krishnamurti that I am the world. Consciousness and reality are two sides of the same coin. This is a very strange statement for most of us, because most of us are accustomed to believe that consciousness is a tiny thing inside the mind, that is a tiny thing inside the body, that is inside the external world. And so, since this is another description that our thought builds up, maybe that it's worthwhile to explore a little bit more closely how thought works. Thought is based on words, on language. When we think, we speak in our head. And language is made of words, and words are small frames that we put around a single aspect of this wide show that we call reality. And the frame creates an opposition between what is inside and what is outside. What is inside is what the name means, maybe apple. So when we say bottle, we put the frame here, and what is inside the frame is the bottle, and what is outside is not the bottle. And this is the use of the words, because when I ask you for a bottle, I expect a bottle and not an umbrella. But we easily tend to think, when our mind has done this frame, we easily tend to think that what is inside the frame is actually separate from what is outside the frame. And this is where duality begins. As an example, a rose seems completely different from from garbage or from a thorny branch. nevertheless, that which we call now rose was in fact a thorny branch 15 days ago and will be garbage in another 15 days. And the rose even seems separate from water, from the earth, from the cloud, from the sun. But if you look closely, we discover that it is literally made of the nourishment absorbed from the earth, of the water sprinkled from the cloud, and of the light of the sun that warms and gives life to it. So, rose, branch, cloud, water, earth, sun are only different names assigned time and again to one indivisible process that we call universe, where no particular form can be isolated from the whole, just as in a river, no single eddy can be separated from the current's overall motion. And even our own bodies are nothing more than a continuous flow of water, food, air, and heat, which passing through us becomes us, so that it is impossible to strictly separate what is inside and what is outside. So, each word, so just to sum up, is a frame that traces a conventional as well as arbitrary edge around some aspect of the whole, differentiating an inside from as opposed to an outside, and creating the illusion that that specific form, for example, the rose, is independent and separate from all other forms identified by different names. But actually, rose and garbage are just two names we give to one nameless process that began with the beginning of the universe and it will have no end. And they are not separate. In fact, in those 15 days between the rose and the garbage, you can't find a borderline, a precise borderline, where the rose ends and the garbage begins. And you can't find this line because it's all in our mind. Because our name have these frames. But there is more. There is more than this. Because till now we spoke about concrete terms like apple. So every concrete term has a generic opposite. The opposite of an apple is not apple. All what is not apple. So it's very generic one. If we analyze abstract terms, the ones we use mostly to describe the true structure of reality, if we analyze abstract terms, we find that each of them has a specific opposite. Right, wrong, good, evil, freedom, slavery, low, high, long, short, and so on. Each one of them has a specific opposite. And all of them are arranged in a pair of mutually exclusive opposites. In the sense, and I am speaking on the logical plane. On the logical plane, the pair of opposites are mutually exclusive. Because, of course, logically, if something is long is not short. Okay, something is right is not wrong, and so on. Now, this is not what I call still duality. It's just a dualistic way of functioning. We find many things that function like that. Even our neurons of our brain, they basically decide to let an electrochemical impulse pass or just stop it, like a switch on, off. So many things are working in this way, either or. Black and white. Alan Watts were speaking about the play of black and white. So that is a natural thing. And it is very useful using black and white opposites, because we as biological organisms have to take quick decisions in order to survive or to adapt ourselves to the challenges of life. So we are constantly full of sense data that overwhelm us. And we have to quickly decide which ones are useful and what to do quickly. And so, using abstract terms in black and white with this pair of opposites is a huge simplification of this situation, because everything becomes either black or white. So we can quickly choose a white and discard black. So it's very useful. But reality is not like that, of course. Reality is full of many degrees of colors. It's not in black and white. Not even a movie is in black and white. A movie in black and white is full of grays. No? And so the problem is not that we use this simplification that is useful. The problem is when we transfer the mutual exclusiveness of the opposites from the logical plane into the reality. And we begin to think that the reality works in that way. While in reality, opposites imply each other, are indivisible. If you have a piece of paper and you just draw a vertical line, you create right and left. And what is more opposite? Something either is right or is left. But if I ask you, please, I want only the right, don't give me the left. How could you? Because when you track that line, when you draw that line, both opposites appear, because the line is just one, and it's the line of our mind. So language is indeed too limited to describe whatever it is. If I say one, it excludes multiplicity. If I say being, it excludes becoming. Yet, how is the universe? The universe is being and becoming. If I say universal, it excludes the particular. But reality does not exclude anything at all. It is the constant background that manifests as the variety of everything. So I can only say neither one nor many, neither being nor becoming, what they call the apophatic way of using the language. And among this pair of opposites, mutually exclusive opposites, one very important for our description of reality is, of course, subject and object, observer and observed, consciousness and world, external world. And again, it's very interesting what happens, because the mind projects these polarity as a mutually exclusive opposites. So I ask, let's check our direct experience and see what happens. For example, now you are listening to my voice. You can describe it as sound, meaning something coming to you from outside. Or you can describe it as hearing, meaning something inside you that is receiving the sound. And this is a couple of opposites, of course. An object, sound, an external object, and inside a subject receiving it. And so we easily tend to think that they are two halves of a process. The external half, the sound, that meets the internal half, consciousness. Is it so? Please check your experience and see if you can find the precise edge, the precise borderline where the sounds out there ends and your hearing in here begins. And you can't find it. And you can find it because, of course, it's in our mind, that line. Because when there is the actual experience, there is no sound, nor hearing. There is just one experience, this. Can you divide it? Only later on, when our thought tries to describe what happened, then says, I heard a sound. And so the duality between subject and object begins. I, the subject, the consciousness, and the sound, the object. But this is a rule of grammar, a rule of language. It's not a rule of nature, of reality. Because in reality there is only this. And the difference is that when we see consciousness, we mean all the experience described in first person. When we say world, we mean all the experience described in third person as objects. It's like ascent and descent that are two different ways of describing the same slope according to the direction that you choose. The slope is one. It's not divided in two halves. From here to here is ascent, and from here to here is descent. It's just all the rope is ascent, or all the rope is described as descent, according to the direction. And if we explore still more our experience in consciousness, we find also that consciousness as such, not to be confused with the contents of consciousness, what the consciousness is conscious of, perceptions, thoughts, bodily sensation. These are contents of consciousness. But consciousness as such is a basic principle which cannot be consistently explained as the end result of any physical or mental cause. Since no explanation nor cause could appear without consciousness already being there as a precondition of that. It is an irreducible reality prior to any perception, any explanation. You know, often you find that I can't speak a lot of this because the time is not enough, but in neurosciences, they often think that consciousness is an effect of an organic material cause that is the brain. The brain is the primary thing. From the brain appears consciousness. That is that if let's say B consciousness, in order to exist, must rely on A, brain. But brain can only be seen, observed, and studied in consciousness. Without consciousness, we couldn't perceive, we couldn't observe, we couldn't analyze, we couldn't study brain. And so also brain, in order to exist, must rely on consciousness. And so it's not so scientific to think that B depends on A, consciousness depends on brain, when it is also true that A depends on B, unless you admit that they are just two sides of the same coin. They're just two ways of describing the same mysterious thing. And so consciousness is becoming very mysterious because, of course, we cannot know consciousness as an object. Consciousness is what inside us knows everything, but we cannot see consciousness as an object. Shankara says it's like the fire cannot burn itself. The knower cannot know himself as an object, of course. And nevertheless, whenever you ask, do I exist? Am I aware? The answer is yes, an evidence. And did you need to ponder on the answer, or the evidence of being was there before any thought? The sense of being that which the mind translates in the sentence I am is the precondition for everything else to appear. Because if, first of all, I am not here, then no perception, no sensation, no thought can appear. So being awareness is prior to the appearance of anything else. And the sense of being is a too simple and immediate evidence for the thought to grasp. Is a non-conceptual awareness. Every time you ask, do I exist? Am I conscious? In the gap between the question and the answer, yes, that are two thoughts. In that gap, there is an evidence that is not made of thought. However, we can check that even the sense of being comes and goes. For example, when we are in deep sleep without dreams, we don't know that we are, though we obviously continue to be as well. But since any change can be perceived only by virtue of a changeless background, who or what notices the coming and going of the sense of being? This presence is the bottomless ground of everything, the unknown source of awareness itself. so perfectly whole, so perfectly full and non-dual, that it has no need whatsoever to divide itself in two parts, being and awareness of being. No need. And thought cannot, of course, understand it. And hypnotized as we are by the illusory idea of being only a tiny fragment separated from the whole, and therefore hounded by a deep sense of lack and that prompts us to pursue a completeness that always eludes us. In our everyday existence, we ceaselessly go after external goals. The next salary, the next mate, the next vacation, the next work, the next house, and so on. But life is too vast, too exuberant, too rich to be confined within the boundaries of one specific goal. Life is not a process, as Nisargadatta used to say. Life is not a process that occurs in time. It is an endless explosion. And at every moment, is it possible just to realize that I am not a separate individual, but rather what we could say the dance of the whole. And this is beauty. And this being the case, teaching people how to become what they already are would be as arrogant and full as teaching waves how to become the sea or water. We don't need to understand that mystery, simply because we are it. Actually, in one's direct and immediate experience, everything, thoughts, perceptions, attention, suffering, the dualistic stance, and even the idea of awareness, and even the idea of non-duality, all are just phenomena arising and passing away in and as the mysterious aliveness that we are. The first time that a hint of this aliveness appeared in the story of my life was in 1981, when I had the privilege to meet for a few days Nisargadatta Maharaj, just 6-7 months before his death. He was still very energetic, but because of the cancer at the throat, he used not many words. He didn't explain very much. He was just saying very direct sentences, pointing directly to the absolute. And I remember the first day I was sitting in that small room with not more than 15-20 people. I decided to be in silence and just to listen to what was happening. But Nisargadatta, who in those days liked to stand instead of sitting, went just in front of me and directly asked, do you have any spiritual practice? And what do you do? At that time, I had been doing meditation for about 9-10 years, mostly Vipassana meditation, but with some of experience in Zen, in Dzogchen, and so on. So I tried to describe my practice, saying, I look at things and let them go. And Nisargadatta said, and when everything is let go, what remains? And I knew the answer because in my Vipassana practice, I get accustomed to understand that all physical, all mental processes just arise and pass away, so they are not really me. I am the witness, I am awareness. That was for me the bottom line of my identity at the time. So I said, everything arises and passes away in the field of awareness. When everything is let go, what remains is awareness itself. But at that time, Nisargadatta put me a question that I never supposed it could be possible to think. Because he asked, and when even awareness is let go, what remains? And of course, I had no answer. So I said, I was very surprised of this question, really. And so I said, I don't know. And at that moment, he was looking directly to my eyes with his eyes that, you know, the eyes of Nisargadatta were very, very full of fire, of passion for truth. And so he said, yes, you don't know. There is the absolute, where you don't know. And something very strange happened to me, because I felt suddenly pushed back behind awareness and falling down in a bottomless pit of the unknown. And it was a wonderful but terrifying experience. So my body-mind complex just grasped to the surface. And it was strange because in the following few days in Bombay, from time to time in everyday life, maybe sitting in a taxi or drinking a chai, it was happening again, this falling back in the unknown, and then this just going to the surface. I felt that it was a very important experience. That. Then the last day I was there, Nisargadatta told me the following words. He told me, don't lose yourself in the many branches of the many useless questions of your mind, but go straight to the root. Go to the source. And then he said, I throw you there. And then he said, moreover, I bury you there. Very strange. And stay still there until even the seeker dies. Then you will find yourself beyond, in the unknown. I understood his words, but I didn't grasp the deep meaning for a lot of time. Why? Because my mind in those days had already begun to build up an interpretation of what was happening. And the interpretation was as follows. Nisargadatta has pointed to me the way to the liberation that at that time for me was a goal to reach. So he's free falling in that bottomless pit. But my ego is too strong, so he tries to go to the surface. And so I have to do more and more meditation in order to melt down my ego. And so I went on doing meditation for other 15 years. I'm very slow to understand things, but when I understand, I understand. So I didn't get the essence of what he said the last day, until the seeker dies, because I went on seeking with this idea that I was separate from liberation. Liberation is over there, somewhere else, And I have to do a path in time in order to approach and reach liberation. This is the essence of duality, because if liberation is a true reality, it is here. If you look God is everywhere, so it must be here now. If you are looking for the whole, if there is the whole, it must comprehend us and here, otherwise it's not the whole. It's the whole, but not with us. If you look for your true self, it could be only where you are, your true self. So that was the play of the seeker. And until the seeker disappears, the play goes on. And when the seeker disappears, not because we have found, but because it's like looking for the darkness with a lamp. And maybe you say, I will switch off the lamp only when I'll find the darkness, of course. But fortunately for us, sooner or later, the batteries just finish. And when it happens, here is the darkness. And so, to conclude, you can see here whatever it is, I have called whatever it is, as objects. You know, you see, you feel your breath, you feel your heart, you hear my voice, and you see all these colors. And while you are doing that, if you just do a little step back, you can sense the sensitive space of awareness where everything appears. It's something very tangible for me. It's the light that makes all those things appear. And if you, not even necessary to step back, if you just let go even this, there is this falling in a bottomless pit. And I think the true meaning of the end of the seeker is that from the point of view of presence that we are, is totally irrelevant whether you are free falling in the bottomless pit of the unknown or if you are trying to grasp the surface. Because when you are in free fall in the unknown, it is presence appearing as free falling. And when you are trying to grasp the surface, it's presence appearing as grasping the surface. I'd like to conclude with, since I've spoken about Nisargadatta, with some sentence of him that I find very, very inspiring. He says, I do not negate the world. I see it appearing in consciousness, which is the totality of the known in the immensity of the unknown. That's it. Thank you.